Welcome to this Jodel webinar on the 27th of July 2020. It's our absolute pleasure this evening to have Martin Lapworth, who has been able to encourage 516 people to register for tonight's event. And as we speak, there are 179 people in the room. We're expecting many more to appear in the next hour and a half or so. Martin's going to be showing us Textivate and TeachVid, two resources which he has created, and how they can be, he's going to be describing how they can be used in relation to creating parallel text activities, as well as many other different activities. So I'm sure that you're going to find this session really, really useful. And I'm going to hand over to Martin now. Enjoy. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. And yeah, I can't wait to see exactly how we can use these different tools in order to enhance all four skills in the languages classroom. Over to you, Martin, and you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Right, I'll just quickly start by saying why I'm talking about parallel texts. I know that for me, when I talk about parallel text, I mean any situation where you're using an L1 text, or if you're an English speaker, an English text to help you to understand or to work with a foreign language text. I know that over the last few years, there's been certain teachers have started using what they call parallel text knowledge organizers, which is a way of presenting key structures for a particular topic or unit of work, and in a way that gets students to annotate the parallel text to make them familiar with different quirks, such as difficulties in pronunciation and that kind of thing. I don't really know anything about that side of parallel text, but I am going to be using something that's taken from somebody's parallel text knowledge organizer to demonstrate the tools Textivate and TeachVid tonight. Okay, so I'll start by looking at Textivate. Now, some people tell me Textivate is quite complicated, but in the beginning, Textivate the idea was super simple. The idea behind Textivate is that you take a text, which I'm going to copy now. You paste it into a text box and you click on Textivate and you get loads of interactive activities automatically generated based on your text. So nothing could be simpler in terms of creating interactive resources. In the beginning, before we added lots of other things like parallel text and matching and text-to-speech and these various other things, the focus of Textivate was squarely on text reconstruction and memorization. I know that to start with, when Textivate first came out, a lot of teachers were using it to get their students to memorize their own prepared written answers or spoken answers for their GCSE oral exams and so on. So, but it's developed beyond that now. But I'll show you quickly the kind of activities that it generates just by dropping in a text and clicking on that button. So we have things like tiles activities where the student has to try and put these sections of text in the correct order to reconstruct the original text. Now, you can see that if a student was approaching a text like this and it was an unknown text to them, it's quite a challenge for them because they have to look at all the text segments and try and work out where where one segment can lead into another, what kind of word has to start the whole thing, what kind of word can possibly come next after that word. And so it's all about looking for context clues within the text. So it's pure text reconstruction. And obviously, if you're more familiar with the text and the more you work with the text, which was initially unknown, it becomes more of a memorization activity. So you're moving from pure text reconstruction into memorization. And so we have all kinds of text, jigsaw reading type activities, like this one. And we have that at various different levels, so you can start really simple, and if you're working with a text that you're trying to learn or memorize, you can start with only 6 sections of text and then work your way up to 24 sections of text, and then you can move on to the more challenging activities that are not just about moving text around, but are about writing in text. So the focus is much more on spelling and writing skills. But I'll quickly show you a couple more of the games before we move on to talk about other things. So we have,
while you're doing that, Martin, I hope you don't mind me interrupting, but we've got a couple of people asking questions around sort of languages that Textivate works with, e.g., does it work with Arabic, Korean, Japanese, and Chinese characters, for example?
okay, Arabic's tricky because of the right to left nature of it, because all of the kind of text sorting and chopping up actions that Textivate performs assume that it goes from left to right. So unfortunately, I know that there are some Arabic teachers and I think possibly Hebrew teachers who do use it, but it's kind of much more limited than it would be with a left to right text. The same kind of caveat applies to character-based languages such as Chinese and Japanese and Korean. There's a user guide on the Textivate blog. If you go to the Textivate main page and click on the little user guides link, there's one, if you scroll down, there's one that's about character-based languages. And it basically explains that the way that Textivate works to chop up text is it has to recognize words. And so if you have a language like Chinese where it's all characters and there aren't any word separations, Textivate doesn't know what to do. So you have to artificially group your Chinese characters into meaning-based chunks in such a way that Textivate can then it can work out how to chop it up. And as well as that, there's also a limitation on on some of the text entry activities. Basically, the text entry activities where you have a keyboard and you're typing out the answers, they essentially only work with the Roman script characters. That's okay. About five activities out of 30 for a text.
So there's still plenty to do. That's brilliant. And what about Russian? Does that work with all activities?
Well, Russian would be the same. Russian is fine because it's left to right and because it has words. But even the text entry ones, the keyboard requires you to use Roman script alphabet. So, so again, there is that limitation. You'll lose about 5 out of 35 activities on text, and similar on the match side, which I'll come to later.
Super. Thank you. That's great.
I'm going to quickly show you a couple of activities that people may have seen before. People who are familiar with Task Magic back in the day will recognize football.
I used to use that all the time. You probably remember me contacting you about it, but back in the day when I was off, in the early days of going off and doing talks and whatever, I would set the children Task Magic activities as well as when I was there, obviously, as well. And they used to absolutely love it, particularly the football one. I used to play the theme music of Match of the Day in class, and they used to absolutely love it. In fact, they always used to say, "He's offside, sir, he's offside," when they would score the goal. But there we are.
Yeah, there's always that goal hang there, isn't there?
Yeah.
The difference between football in Textivate and TeachVid is that, and Task Magic is that in Textivate you can play against the computer, so you don't have to be sat next to somebody else. So, for example, if I'm playing a one-player game that lasts for a minute and I start the game, I'm playing against the computer. So I've got the ball, I've got to get the answer correct. Now I can pass. And as with Task Magic, if you try long passes and shots, they're less accurate than the shorter ones. Try a shot, goal. Okay.
Hey.
And now it's the other team's play, and I'm doing nothing now. They're just going to score against me.
We've got another question, Martin, if that's okay. So Alejandro has asked, is this tool accessible, e.g. ADA compliant? Can it be used by a screen reader, for example? Do you know?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not sure. We've never implemented anything like that, so I couldn't tell you. Okay.
Great, thank you.
But I'll move on. So we have millionaire games. So this is where you have to reorder the text to and not get any questions wrong in order to win a million. And we have other games such as, I don't know, Invaders. So we have a Word Invaders game here. So where five words have been taken out of that section of text, and we're going to click on them in the correct order before the blocks hit my lines there. All kinds of activities like that, and we have snake activities. Whoop.
So are all the activities that are in Task Magic also in Textivate? Because someone's asked the question, is Textivate very different from Task Magic then? They're quite similar, aren't they, I think?
Elements of them are. Obviously it's web-based, and there's all kinds of storing options and homework options you got with Textivate that you wouldn't have with Task Magic. I've written a blog post comparing Task Magic and Textivate. I think it's on the Textivate.
And it works on all devices as well, doesn't it? Textivate, whereas Task Magic would only work on Windows PCs, I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah, big difference.
Brilliant.
Okay. Well, so anyway, so that's in the beginning. There was, what's happened? I've lost my text there. I don't know what happened there. I'm going to blame Zoom. Anyway, so there's the beginning with our text now. And then after about a year, I think we decided to add the option to add matching items. So I'll start a new resource. I'll add in some matching items, which I've copied. And so the match side of it is very like any other kind of flashcard vocab learning app. Sorry, I put that in the wrong place. Let's go there. In that you put in a list of matching items, and it gives you all kinds of vocab matching activities. So you have things like this one where you have to just basically match up the French and the English, and so on. You've got activities such as 3 in a row, which you can also play against the computer. Oh, got it wrong. Whoops. Now it's the computer's turn. And so anyway, every 3 squares in a row scores you a point, and you're playing against the computer. You've also got activities such as snake. I use it as a camera. See how that works. And games such as maze, where you're steering around a maze, steering the yellow Pac-Man type square around the maze, being chased by the monster, and you just have to click on the correct one with an accent, and so on. And the monster chases you, and it starts off slowly, and it gets quicker, and then there are 2 monsters, then 3, then 4, and it becomes quite an exciting game.
That's
anyway,
fantastic.
So
I'm sure the kids love that.
Yeah.
We've got another question from Jane, if that's okay. How can you set these activities in a computer room situation, and can you set them on Google Classroom, etc.?
Set them on Google Classroom in terms of then seeing feedback on Google Classroom, do you mean?
Well, so the whole question is, how can you set these activities in a computer room situation? I presume if it's the same as Task Magic, you basically say the activities you'd like them to do, or you give them the core text or content that you want them to access, and then you just let them get on with it, as it were. So it's not, am I right in saying you can't like give them all the activities, you just have to tell them what they are, and then they then get on with it? Is that right?
No, you can provide a link to the resource, which will take them to the menu page, which is what we're seeing in front of us here, the activity
okay
menu.
So you could share that via Google Classroom, therefore, couldn't you?
And you can also share links directly to different activities. Now I'm working with text that I've put into Textivate here that's just in the browser. It hasn't been uploaded anywhere.
Okay.
So it's just being passed around in the local storage cache of the browser at the moment.
Yeah.
Because we're not uploading anything. If you have a look at the matching items I've put there, this is essentially the same, exactly the same as the first text that I put in as a text, but broken down into clauses, sentences, chunks, and so on. So if you look, that's what it follows. Say, pendant mon temps libre, je passe beaucoup de temps sur mon ordinateur, et j'utilise. So it's the same text. Now I've seen a lot of people when I go look around at activities that people have uploaded to Textivate, I see that a lot of people who use parallel text, knowledge organizers, use Textivate in this way. So they create kind of like a parallel text type activity by breaking their parallel text down into English and French, and then putting that into as matching items into Textivate. So this allows you to do things, for example, like with flashcards. If we choose to show the text in the original order, then it will go through the text. It'll go through the text as if we were reading the text from start to finish, and we've got various clue options that we can use for this. So if students are testing themselves, they can just look at that and see if they can remember it. But they can also do things like change the clue so that it shows the text with the vowels missing, or with consonants missing, or with initial letters shown, and so on. So this is just a flashcards thing. There's no kind of internal assessment on this. It's you click it when you know it, or if you don't know it. If you knew it, you click on the tick, and if you didn't know it, you click on the cross, and it'll be repeated after all the items. But it's a good way of going through the whole text. So it is sort of like running through a whole reading text with the English as a prompt and rebuilding the French or the foreign language. So je passe beaucoup de temps sur mon ordinateur, and so on. And the same thing applies to various other activities, such as jumbled words, for example, jumble. So this one it's launched itself automatically in random order, but if I click on the original order, it will work exactly the same as the way we had it with flashcards. So now we can go through the whole text section by section, and so on. Okay, I'm going to be super conscious of the time, because when I saw
no, you're fine. You're good. We just got another question now in the chat. How easily does this work in languages where the word order isn't as in English, e.g. with German infinitives at the end, etc.?
But this works perfectly well, because you just write out, you make sure that the section that you put into the matching pairs works out. So if you're going to have a sentence with a verb at the end, well, it'll appear that way in German. It'll appear in its normal English order in English.
Yeah.
What you probably would be difficult to do is if you wanted to split one of those clauses halfway through, so that you've got the vile part but you've not got the verb at the end, for example. That wouldn't make a lot of sense to do that. So you've got to think about how you want to construct your activity.
That's fine. We've got another question from Cider, which is, what is the difference between parallel text and knowledge organizer? But I suppose because there's so many definitions of what a knowledge organizer is, I think that's really an impossible question to answer. Really, I would suggest, especially just go onto the Facebook group, knowledge, whatever it's called, MFL or knowledge organizers for MFL teachers, whatever it is, and then you can see there are lots of different types of knowledge organizers. So that's a really hard question to answer, I think.
Yeah, and as I say, I'm not an expert on that at all. Yeah. I've been putting parallel text into Textivate for a few years, and then I recently came across people from the Michaela School. I think they started this idea of parallel text knowledge organizers, and thought, well, that fits perfectly with what with Textivate. So that's why I'm kind of using that as a thread.
Lovely. Can you add images in Textivate? I don't think you can you?
You can, yeah.
You can. Okay, great. Great.
You have to have them uploaded somewhere. So I for example, if you've got a load of images in your Dropbox account, you can add images and create matching activities.
Lovely.
But that's not going to fall within the remit of our parallel text focus today.
No, of course, that's fine. But it's just we had a question. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. So I'll stop. No, it's fine. No, yeah. Let's focus on the content. I know that people have lots of questions, but I think if we focus on the content now, it'd be great.
But I'll say that in answer to that question, that as with previous, that if you go to the Textivate blog and the user guides, there is a section on creating match activities with images. There are, I think there's probably 100 or so user guides there for various different things, because there's so many different things that you can do. Okay, I'm going to go back to the start page, and so we've sort of looked at parallel texts using matching items. Now, there's no reason. This is another thing about Textivate that makes it different from many other tools. There's no reason why we can't have. I mean, we can create a text-based resource and we can create a match-based resource, but in Textivate, you can do both at once. So if I put that text back in there into the text box and there's matching items in that box, we now have two sets of activities to choose from, text activities and match activities. And we also have now on the menu screen, you will see that because it's used exactly the same text here, it automatically glosses it so that you can click into this and it'll tell you what the English means. So as you're reading, if you're not sure about the meaning of anything, you can do that kind of thing as well. Is the gloss appearing there? Is there a yellow box?
Yes, yeah, it is. We've got another question, if it's okay. Can the students make their own activities, or is it all through the teacher? Like, with other tools that the students can make their own activities, is that possible?
Students can make their own activities, but they'll only be for their own use. And basically, I made a video tutorial on that a couple of weeks ago, which explains how they have to have a student login, and then they have to basically type and paste in their text, and then if they want to reuse it at a later date, they have to copy it out somewhere else into an email or a doc, Google Doc or something. So it's a matter of pasting it in whenever you want to use it, because you can't actually upload anything on a student account.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Right, I'm going to move on to looking at proper parallel text now. So that was just using sort of parallel text functionality using matching items. Now, if we go back to our menu screen, to our edit screen, our creation screen here, we have a tab called Extras. And on this Extras tab, we have all sorts of options for adding extra things to our resource. So we can add videos, we can add an audio, we can add a big image that appears next to the activities. And we can also add a parallel text, which in most cases tends to be an English translation or an L1 translation of the main text. So I've copied and pasted in an English translation of our French text there, and you'll now see that when I click on Textivate, it's exactly the same as before. We've got our text menu and we've got our match menu, but we've also got a new icon at the top, which is the parallel text icon. And if we click on this, the parallel text in English appears next to all of our activities. Now, what this did essentially was change the focus of Textivate from being one that was all about pure text reconstruction and memorization, and it added all kinds of possibilities to do with scaffolded translation. So now the activities, the text activities in particular, you're no longer sort of doing them just focusing on the French or the Spanish text or whatever it may be. It's not just text reconstruction anymore. You've got something to refer to. You've got the English as a structural basis to help you to reconstruct the French or the foreign text. So it means also that we're no longer working with a text where there is any possibility that the student doesn't know what the text is supposed to mean. So, you know, because you can imagine a situation where if you gave someone an activity such as this one, I'll just remove the parallel text. If there's words there they don't know what they mean, and it's the first time they come across it, there's a lot of guessing that will have to go on in the first instance. But by adding a parallel text, you're basically saying, right, here's a load of chunks of text, put them in the same order, in the correct order, so they mean the same as this English here. So now you're not just looking to see, well, how could this text possibly start? You're looking to see which bit of French means during my free time. So the focus has changed completely now. So it's not memorization. I mean, there is, the more you work through it, there will be an element of memorization because you naturally end up memorizing the text anyway. And there is still an element of text reconstruction because you're looking at, well, what comes after sur? I'm looking for a noun probably, or some kind of noun phrase. But it's no longer pure text reconstruction. You've got something to refer to help you structure the French. And it also means that it makes it a lot easier to work with Textivate with text that students haven't seen before, because as I say, they're not going to be in a situation where they're thinking, well, I have no idea what this is even supposed to make when it's finished. You know, they've got the English to refer to, which tells them, well, when I finish this activity, the French is supposed to say this. So you're kind of working your way through to build the text. So if I show you a couple of other examples of that, for example, we have a multi-choice activity. So here
we've got a couple of people in the chat saying they're loving the parallel text activity that you're showing right now, which is great to hear, isn't it? Yeah,
excellent. So this one is just a 1 in 3 multiple choice. There are a couple of other options for this as well, but basically clicking to rebuild the original text. So je passe beaucoup de, I spend a lot of, when I'm looking for the word that means time. So you can see how having the English there makes the activity much more doable. It doesn't make it necessarily any less of a test of linguistic ability. It just means that you know what you're supposed to be building in the first place. So it makes it easier, but not necessarily easier in that way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And also we can do things like gap fill. So now you're not just looking at a text with a load of gaps and a load of words at the bottom and thinking, well, which one could possibly go there, and relying purely on context clues. You've also got the English to refer to, so that you know, well, the first bit there is supposed to say during my free time. So how do we say that? That's probably the word during that I'm looking for. And so I think it was quite transformative. It changed Textivate from, as I say, from being a memorization tool to being something that had a much different focus, much more on translation. Okay.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Very, very on message as well. I can see that you've got the print button there. We've had the question a couple of times, can you print off activities so they can be done as on paper worksheets as you could with Task Magic with Textivate?
Yes.
Lovely.
It doesn't include the parallel text. None of the print options include the parallel text, but if that's a gap fill, for example, and if I go back to the one of the tiles activities, for example, we can print this and it looks like that. And I was just going to show we're talking about translation, and I was going to kind of the most almost proper translation here. For example, we have all these these are the letter entry activities that I referred to before, which won't work with non-Roman script languages, but we've got ones where the vowels have been removed, ones where we have the initial letters, and ones where all we have is the shapes and the punctuation. So this is almost approaching proper translation here. So you can see the size and the shape of the words, and you can see you know, you've got some idea what it is you're trying to put together, and you know that what you're trying to write is supposed to say during my free time. So obviously, as you work your way through the activities, this can be one of the latter stage ones where you're properly testing the student's ability to write the text. So it's practicing their writing skills as well. And also you can print a worksheet for this.
Fantastic. So you could print it off as a PDF if you wanted to, couldn't you, presumably? So instead of choosing the your printer, the Brother MFC, what have you, you could choose the save as PDF instead. Great.
Absolutely, yeah. So not all of the screens have a PDF printable option, but a lot of them do. I'm just going to go and quickly show you one more sort of parallel text option, which is quite nice. On the Extras tab, if you scroll down to beyond the parallel text, you've got more parallel text options, and there's 4 checkboxes there, and the second one says use the main Textivate text as the parallel text for match activities. And if we click on that, what that basically does is, if we go to our menu now and we open the parallel text, so for the menu we see the English parallel text. For the text activities, we see the English parallel text by the side. But for all of the match activities, for example, flashcards, we now see the French text, which is our main text for our resource, now appears as a parallel text for the match activities, and that allows us to to have several sort of find the French type activities. So, for example, if we now put the flashcards in random order and we begin our activity, so now we're told we need to look for, but now I find it hard to imagine. And so the student, if the student knows that, fair enough, they can just click on it straight away and say, yeah, I got that correct. They can use clues as before, so they can use initials clues, but they can also read through the text to see if they can find it if they're not sure what it should be. Now, obviously, they might not be inspired to do that kind of thing with these flashcards where they're just self-testing, but activities such as jumble, for example, if we change it to random order, as I said, so that it's not going through it in order. So now we're trying to find, but now I find it hard to imagine, and so we can look in there and try and find those words. Okay, and the same applies to the text entry ones, like initials, for example, but most of the time. So now we're looking at it in random order. We're trying to find the French that means but most of the time. Not quite sure if I can remember how to say it, but if I look in the text, I might find a sequence of words from the text which will fit with that. So you can see it's kind of it's scaffolded find the French activities is what we've got there.
Is it okay? Well, Joseph in the chat to say, can you show us that again, please? How did you switch back to the French text on the left? I know we're recording this, but is it okay just to show quickly? Is that all right?
Yeah, no, I didn't have to do anything. All I did was by clicking that checkbox to use the main text as the parallel text for match activities. As soon as I click into any of the match activities, the text will be the French one.
Lovely.
Okay? Whereas for the menu and for the text activities, it will be the English one.
Right.
Okay.
In the chat, Ramesh has asked whether it's possible to change the background colours for, say, students with special educational needs, for example, I'm thinking.
There are colour scheme options, but
there we are.
But I'm not sure if they help with your special educational needs.
Okay, but you can change the background.
You can set them. You've got basically 5 or 6 colour options that you can scroll through. Okay. That's what that is. Yeah,
that's great.
Okay. I'm conscious that we're half an hour in already, so
yeah, don't worry. I think that's the thing when you have lots of people and lots of questions. But I mean, we can stop the questions for a minute and then we can look at those at the end. But we're going to have a lot of questions to deal with. But yeah, feel free if you want to.
I don't mind the interruptions. I'm just trying to speed things up my end. That's all really.
That's okay.
Now we've looked at kind of scaffolded translation by using parallel text, and another thing we can do through the extras tab is we can add text to speech. So this top section here, text to speech, we can add a speech engine for our French text, and we have English to French matching items. So we don't need anything for the English, but for the French, that's for the right hand match, which is French, we'll add the text to speech. And now we click through. And we can see that everything, we've got little speaker icons all over the place, which when we click them, will read out our bits of text-to-speech. Now, I'm not. When I tried this, I said to you before, Joe, this comes through quite loud, so I hope it isn't overbearing.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Pendant mon temps libre,
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
je passe beaucoup de temps sur mon ordinateur.
So, and now you're providing students with an audio model. Now, you may argue it's not the best audio model because it's computer-generated speech, but generally, I find it does give reasonable pronunciation for words. Sometimes the intonation's a bit off, but it's better than nothing. And if you want to, for a rough and ready way of providing an oral model for the students, so that they're not just looking at that, and they could have done all those activities we've seen before, and be saying to themselves, pendant mon temps libre, couldn't they? But now they've got the text-to-speech, at least they know it probably doesn't sound like that, and it's supposed to sound something like that.
Pendant mon temps libre.
Okay. So
can you just clarify how to enable that? Because I just missed it because I was looking at the chat, because we've had a couple of people asking about the text-to-speech.
Yeah. So it's in the extras tab.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And it's there at the top.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's great. We've got another couple of questions if it's okay. So Oliver's asked, does the platform enable students to manipulate and refashion the language, or is it all based on a given exact translation?
It's all based on reconstructing the original text.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so it's down to either the teacher or the students to put in a text, and then it will then generate the activities as a result. Is it possible for, does the teacher have the ability to individualize the options per pupil, e.g. to support individual skill development for the children, or is it down to them to choose the activities that they do? Is that right?
They can. You can provide links if you're prepared to provide links on an individual basis to each student. Then you can certainly do that if you want to. But
okay,
it's. I mean, there's all kinds of differentiation built into this. It's just, but I'm not sure if the students themselves are the best at knowing what's best for them. But,
yeah.
I mean,
fair enough.
Some will and some won't. So, yes, you can provide very detailed. If you wanted to, on a per student basis, you could say, right, I want you to do this link, this link, this link, and so on, all based on the same resource. Yeah. I'll quickly show you some how this text-to-speech affects some of the activities now. So
good idea.
Very quickly though. So now this tiles activity that we looked at before, you see that we've got some text-to-speech options that have appeared at the bottom there. If we choose this as text-to-speech sections, which is what we have in this drop-down menu here, it means that each section, which is a sentence, will be spoken by the text-to-speech. So it'll sound like this.
Pendant mon temps libre, je passe beaucoup de temps sur mon ordinateur. Et j'utilise mon portable régulièrement pour envoyer des emails et pour partager des photos.
Okay, so you can see now that obviously you've provided all kinds of oral support, listening support to the students. So they may still choose to look at all the context clues and all the rest of it, but if they're listening to the French, they should be able to follow what's being said and put the chunks of text in order. Let me quite quickly show you a couple more.
We've just had a quick question about feedback, which I think you've just answered anyway. Does it provide feedback on each activity? I mean, it does, doesn't it? It gives you feedback for...
Well, it'll provide you feedback at a per interaction level, in the sense that if you drop something that's wrong there, then it won't be correct, and if it is correct, it'll appear green. And at the end of each activity, there's a pop-up that shows you your score for that activity, your correct interactions, percentage score, and so on. And using things such as sequences and challenges, that's another way of providing feedback, which I'll hopefully come on to later in a couple of minutes, just to show you how they work. I'll just quickly show you how, for example, this now becomes a dictation activity.
Pendant mon temps libre, je passe beaucoup de temps sur mon ordinateur.
Okay, so without a parallel text and without the text-to-speech, this becomes an activity that requires people to look at a series of words and try and work out how they fit together as a sentence. But by providing the text-to-speech, we've essentially created a kind of dictation activity. So we're not actually having to spell the words in this activity, but we are listening for the words as they're spoken, so that we can pick them out from the spoken stream of words. So it works on various levels. Obviously, there are some activities that are easier than others, and as you work through the levels, you've created all kinds of differentiated, scaffolded dictation activities that develop all kinds of micro skills, such as this one. Here, you've got all of the letters in the text with all the punctuation and spaces removed. So it's kind of a stream of letters, and in your speech, you've got a stream of sound, and the students have to listen and work out, maybe from previous exposure to the words, they can remember where the word boundaries are, but it helps them to familiarize themselves with recognizing those word boundaries when they hear the language spoken as well.
Pendant mon temps libre, je passe beaucoup de temps sur mon ordinateur. Et j'utilise mon portable régulièrement pour envoyer des emails et pour partager des photos.
And if you're not sure, you can click on the hint button and it'll show you where the next one is, which you can go through if you want with the teacher in front of the class if you want to do it quickly. Using the hints affects your scores. That's why it says I've only got 3% there for this activity at the moment. And at its most difficult level, I suppose, just like we had with the no letters activity before, this now becomes a dictation activity. So I'll choose a shorter one to play because you can play them in any order on this.
Néanmoins, il faut toujours être prudent, car il est très facile de devenir accro.
See, I wasn't listening, that's the trouble there.
Néanmoins, il faut toujours être prudent, car il est très facile de devenir accro.
And so on. So that's essentially a dictation activity. And so you've seen how we've added, by adding the parallel text, we've created translation activities. By adding text to speech, we've added dictation activities. But what if we combine them both together? And so if we combine them both together, we're starting to approach something which was kind of what inspired me to create TeachVid. And I'll show you the kind of thing I mean, really. So what we got here is we've got dictation and translation activities appearing together. For example,
can the teachers upload their own audio
Dans
if they
mon
want
temps
to?
libre, je passe beaucoup de temps sur mon ordinateur.
yeah. So in the extras tab that we saw on the home screen, there is an option to link an audio, but it's an audio for the whole resource. There's one audio for the whole resource. So if you record the whole French text and you upload it to Dropbox or somewhere like that, and then you put the link into there, then you'll have an audio player appear at the top of the screen. But you can't have the audio and the parallel text. You can only have one or the other.
Right.
Something I tried to solve when I developed TeachVid. But so the way of getting dictation and translation together in Textivate is by using text to speech and parallel text. And so what you have with an activity like this is you've got dictation, listening micro skills going on. You're listening out for the words as they appear. You've also got scaffolded translation, and you've got text reconstruction with all those context clues. And so there's lots of things going on there all at once. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate there's lots of questions, but is it okay if you just answer, can the students pause the audio to give them time to write? Is that possible?
With text, if you've added your own audio, as you mentioned before,
yeah.
So it's an audio, it'll be an audio player, so you can pause that, yeah, at any time. So you can play the bit of audio, pause it, do whatever you've got to do, and then move on. With the text to speech, it will play the section as defined by the activity. Yeah?
Okay. Okay, because we have a lot of people in the chat. I'm sure people appreciate that I can't stop every single time there's a question. I appreciate you have questions. I'm sure Martin is more than happy to be contacted afterwards about the questions, but I can't put every single question because otherwise we won't get an opportunity to look at TeachVid, which is what Martin obviously and myself want to do as well.
Yeah.
So I will obviously ask some questions, but I can't ask every single question. I'm sure people appreciate the reason for that.
I'm going to put something in the chat, which is a link to a resource if people want to open this.
Cool, thank you.
And I'm going to open that resource myself now. So what I'm looking at now is it's almost the same resource as the one we have here, but I've just done something slightly different to it. If you look on the edit screen now, you can see that doesn't appear to be one continuous text. It's because I've added a chunks tag into it, and I've put the different, split each paragraph or sentence up into smaller meaning-based chunks. So pendant mon temps libre is one chunk. Je passe beaucoup de temps sur mon ordinateur, and so on. These are all useful meaning-based chunks that we can refer to step by step. And what that does is it affects a couple of the activities, in particular the multiple choice activity, but also all of those tiles activities. And I'll show you how that works. So now, if I go to multi-choice, 1 in 3, okay, and we add our parallel text back in, and we've got our text-to-speech enabled, and you see it appears the same as before in quite long sections here. But we've got these two options at the bottom, words and sentences. And what sentences does is if you click this option, it will split it according to either full stops or line breaks in your text. And because we've chunked our text in the edit screen so that we've got it broken down into lots of little chunks separated by line breaks, it means that if we choose that sentences option here, it will reload. But now we're rebuilding the whole text using those chunks that we've defined. And this can be it's a really good way of focusing on the text chunk by chunk. It allows you to decide where the splits get made in the text. So now this is a chunk by chunk translation activity. And if we decide to speak it, then we can play it.
Pendant mon temps libre, je passe beaucoup de temps sur mon ordinateur. Et j'utilise mon portable régulièrement pour envoyer des emails et pour partager des photos.
Okay. And I've spoken to you a lot about these things that you can click on all of the screens to do with, I don't know, the number of tiles, or whether or not the words get shown for gap fill, or whether to show it as words or sentences and so on. This is when you mentioned before about fine-tuning an activity for various different students. This is how activity sharing works. This is an uploaded resource, so it allows me to share a link to it. The one I had before, I hadn't saved it, and I've now got rid of that. But once it's uploaded, and it's either a public or shareable resource, you'll see a share option appear at the top there. And so, for example, if we want to share to exactly this configuration that we have on the screen now, we can click on share. We can say link embed to this page, link to this page. We're going to include the parallel text. That's what that option means there. And then we're going to go to the fine-tuning link here, and that'll give us various other options. And now for fine-tuning, we can either decide to have no fine-tuning, in which case it'll just open the page with the parallel text showing. We can choose to enforce the configuration, which means that when the students land on that activity, they can't change it. They can't change whether or not text-to-speech shows, or whether it's words or sentences. They can't show or hide the word list. They can't turn off auto check and various other things. Or you can set it as initial configuration. But we're going to enforce it. We're going to split it by sentences, which is the configuration we have now on this screen. And we're going to turn on the text-to-speech sections so that the student can access this if they want to as a translation and dictation resource together, which rebuilds the text chunk by chunk. So by choosing all those options, we close that box, and that has updated the URL in that box there. And we can copy that and we can paste that in an email to somebody, or put it on a web page or whatever, or we can tweet it, or we can share it by Facebook, or we can share it with a class. So if we set up classes through the classrooms option, the classes option on Textivate, we can share that link directly with the class. So I've got a class here that I set up called training, and I'll choose to share that with the class. Okay, it's been shared successfully. And if I now go back to the Textivate homepage, and I click on the classes option, I'll see that within the group training, I have some assigned links, and we have the activity 1 in 3 with a parallel text. That's the name, that's the title of the resource. And if we click the link, it arrives there exactly as we configured it. Yeah. So there's all kinds of things you can do. You could have chosen to show it without the parallel text, and you can do that with lots of different activities. So for example, you can choose to show gap fill with 20 gaps, but without the word list showing, and auto check turned on or off, or text to speech turned on or off. These are all different parameters that you can specify when you fine tune the link to an activity.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Can you share a sequence in the same way?
Yes, I'll show you how that works. So
okay, because we've had that question a couple of times. Yeah, that's why I'm asking, because we've had, when we have individual questions, I'm sort of leaving them, but when we've had a couple of people asking the same question, I think that's fair enough. So
you mentioned sequences are a part of Textivate which allow you to set sequences of activities which are pre-configured, just like we've just done with that activity link there, which usually have a pass mark, or they don't have to have a pass mark, but very often have a pass mark, which means that students have to do the activities in the order specified, and they can't move on to the next question until they've hit the pass mark. So I'll quickly show you how that works. you'll see this resource already has a sequence added, and I'll quickly show you how that works. So here we have a sequence. It has a multi-match 1 in 3, which is a vocab activity. In random order, the items will appear as not switched. There'll be English prompts requiring French answers, and there's no text-to-speech, and we have a target of 60%. So all these different things that you can select here, they're exactly the same things that you can select when you're sharing a link to an activity, or when you're configuring an activity on an activity page. And so we've set up our sequence like that. And you'll see as a result of having a sequence as part of the resource, we also have a link to sequence option in our share thing there. And that will link directly to the sequence. If you particularly want your sequence to appear with the parallel text already enabled, then you can go to any screen that has a parallel text possibility. For example, I don't know what happened there. I think I'm having some problems with the internet. It took a little while. Okay, so here we have a screen with parallel text. So the menu screen and any of the activity screens, you can click on the parallel text to open it. And once you've got it open with the parallel text visible, you'll also see the option to link to sequence, but also to include the parallel text. And so if I now create a link to that predefined sequence for my class and add it to my class and click on share, and now we go back. And we go back to classes, we'll see that we now have 2 links. We have the 1 in 3 activity, and we also have a sequence. And if we click on that link, it'll open the sequence there with the parallel text showing. Now, note that it's showing the French text because we've configured it so that it will show the main French text as the parallel text for all matching activities. And what we're looking at here for our first activity is a matching activity. Yeah?
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay, right. And one more thing I could show you, but maybe very quickly.
While you're doing that, we've been asked about, can you set classes up on Textivate, or is it just a question of creating the links?
You can set classes. So the classes I've set there, this is my class.
I see, sorry, yeah.
You just click on new class, and I'll call it Joe Dale. There we go, call it Joe Dale. And I'll put a student in it called Joe Dale. And I'll click on save, and it's now created a classroom called Joe Dale, and it's got a student called Joe Dale, and that's his password. So now Joe Dale now logs in to Textivate using my username, and he puts his individual password, which is that, into the individual student password box. And so that gives them student access then. And it also means that they're tracked throughout the activities, so that the sequences and challenges, which is the other thing I'll quickly demonstrate, the teacher knows who's doing what. Okay. So challenges was the other thing I wanted to quickly show you. A challenge is a scoreboard competition where students can have access to the activity menu, so they can choose any of the activities that they want to do, and they score points per interaction and depending on the accuracy of their interactions. When I say per interaction, I mean, for example, if you have an activity where you're typing in lots of text, then every single click is an interaction. Every single letter that you type in is interaction, whereas if you're putting blocks of text in order, then every block is an interaction. So you can score many more points for doing the more challenging activities than you can for doing the much simpler ones. I'll quickly show you how we set that up. New challenge, we'll call it training. I'll add a resource. This is the resource that we've been working with. Click on that. So we've got our resource. It's automatically set for August 3rd. Well, you can do it for anywhere from 10 minutes, 5 minutes, I believe, to a month, or maybe even a couple of months. You can choose whether or not students' passwords are required. So those passwords that I mentioned before, you can decide whether it can only be accessible by someone who's one of your classes. And you can also set up team competitions so that all of the students, when they land on the challenge page, they'll be presented with a list of teams which you put into this team box, team names box, rather than self-identifying with their own names. And so that's quite a nice way of getting people to work collaboratively. And also, if you have got the individual student password set up and you set a team challenge in this way, it means that although the students only see the total scores for the team, as this person who created the challenge and as the resource owner, you can click and you can see individual student contributions to each team. So you can see the points that each person scored towards the team total. I'll quickly
Excellent.
show
I
you
really like that, because someone was asking about how do you demonstrate learning taking place. So that was a really nice way of doing that, isn't it? I think, to show achievement over
and the
time.
sequences, yeah.
That's great.
And I'll quickly show you. We've got some parameters here. So auto check, we want on where available. Split text by sentences and chunks, because that's the way we set up this activity, this resource. We'll show the word list, random order, no switching. Okay. So we save it, and that's that. And we now have a link, which I'll post here in case people want to have a quick play.
Yeah, please, that'd be lovely. Well, while you're doing that, we've had a couple of people asking about how much does it cost, unsurprisingly, and secondly, are there certain things that you have with different tiers? Is there like the share option, for example? Is that only for premium subscribers?
Yes. So
Okay.
the basic one, if you get the basic subscription, you're okay to work with it on Zoom, so that everyone else is looking at your screen, or in front of a class with a projector, and you can print worksheets. But you can't create any resources that you can share with anybody else, and you can't set up any sequences or challenges or anything like that.
Okay, but if you have the premium subscription, you can save each activity, so you have it like as a bank of resources. Is that right?
You save your resources, so and then from your resources you can create links, so you can either link to a resource or to a sequence or to an activity within a resource. So I think you've got something like 500. With premium you can store 500 resources, or maybe it's 1,000. I can't remember. It's quite a lot.
Okay.
I don't think if anybody ever reaches the limit, they usually tell me, and I say, okay, I'll bump it up again. It rarely happens.
Thank you.
Okay, and so the way that this works is, if I want to take part in this, I've already earlier on today self-identified, which is what you have to do on challenges, as Martin Lapworth, which is quite appropriate, I think. And then so I click through to the activities, and quickly to show you how they work. I do an activity, but now, maintenant, to share photos, partager des photos, I can, je peux. It's very easy to, il est très facile de. I find it hard, j'ai du mal. And it's told me I've got 36 points uploaded to the scoreboard. So at any point I can go back to the challenge menu and scoreboard, and I can see my points there. And if any one of your lovely students is self-identified with a rude word as their name, then you can delete them. I mean, there is something that filters out most rude words, but they're very inventive with their insults. You can select scores from there and just delete them. So as long as you're on top of that, you can make sure that it doesn't stay there too long. And this, if we click on this option here, the scoreboard will auto refresh every 30 seconds. So the students are working away and they see their points at the end of each activity. And every 30 seconds, the scoreboard that you got on the whiteboard will update, and you might see people jockeying for position there.